Preparing to live stream the meeting. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm actually going to record it so I can do a really lovely edited version in case I do any bloopers and things like that. So we can do an edited version for YouTube after. Right, so we are officially live on YouTube. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the launch of Ricky Ray's book today, The Sound of the Earth Singing to Herself. Thank you all for coming, and we've got a really great international audience and performers today, so I'm very excited to hear everyone read. I'm going to introduce Ricky for you today. My name is Isabel Kenyon. I run Fly on the Wall Press. We're in the UK in Manchester, and we're a micropress. We do political and socially conscious poetry, short stories, and magazines. And I'm delighted to launch The Sound of the Earth Singing to Herself today, which is obviously a little bit backwards on my screen, but it looks like this. And Ricky Ray is a gorgeous poet. It's been great to work on this. And it's been doing really well. Readers have been loving it, and I hope you're going to really love hearing it spoken tonight. So Ricky Ray is a disabled poet, a critic, and essayist, and the founding editor of Rascal, which is a journal of ecology, literature, and art. He is the author of Frailty, Quiet, Grit, and Glory, Broken Sleep Books to 2020, so soon to come, and The Sound of the Earth Singing to Herself. His awards include the Cormac McCarthy Prize, the Ron McFarland Poetry Prize, and the Liam Rector Fellowship. His work appears wildly and widely, including The American Scholar, Verse Daily, Diode Poetry Journal, and The Moth. And he was educated at Columbia University and the Bennington Writing Seminars, and can be found, in his words, but I'm sure it's much more graceful than this, hobbling along in the old green fields with his old brown dog, Addie. And so we're going to hear all about this book later from Ricky. But what I'd like to say is that this is sort of us singing to the earth tonight and singing about the beauty of the world. And this book very much entwines the beauty of the world and Ricky's love of life with also the physical pain that he shoulders daily. So while we're looking at nature, that's where Ricky finds his healing. And there's definitely a lot of feature of Addie in this, which is his gorgeous dog. So I'm looking forward to hearing that read later. But we have two amazing guest performers today who we're going to begin with. So first up, we have Devin Kelly. And Devin is a poet, essayist, and high school teacher, and he lives in New York City. He's the author of Blood on Blood, which is with Unknown Press. And In This Quiet Church of Night, I Say Amen. And that was 2017 with Civil Coping Mechanisms Press. He's a winner of the Best of the Net Prize, and his work has appeared in The Guardian, Long Reads, Lit Hub, and more. And later I'll introduce our second performer, and that's Dylan Krieger. So Devin, when you are ready, we are all ears for your poetry.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. I love Ricky's work, and I'm just honored to celebrate it. I'm going to read a few poems. These Zoom readings I've never really adjusted to them, so bear with me. But just thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This first one is a relatively new one. It's called A Sun Setting Through a Window, or 7 Layers of Paint. If you've said you were going to quit but didn't, if sometimes even the largest room feels cramped, if you leave the ones you love to be with the ones you don't, if you've built a house of fire, if you've left food in the microwave, if you forgot to fall asleep, if you woke to find a fly crawling the long crack between the wall and ceiling, if last year's clothes no longer fit, if it's not a question of size, if it's always something else, if you've spent an hour looking for what was in your pocket, if you've collapsed out of sheer annoyance with the self, if you've wanted to scream but knew only the neighbors would hear you, if you do not know their names, if you've cultivated a life of conscious avoidance, if you sometimes forget your mother's middle name, if you do not always get the job done, if desire is your best kept secret, if it's just one more cigarette out the window, if it's just one more, if your friends are getting married, if sometimes you want to reject the invitation, if you think about joy the way a child thinks about algebra, if you're just trying to figure it out, if it's just another day, if you're fine, if you don't know what to order, if it's another conversation, if you begin with, I'm sorry, I forgot, if your friends say, you worry too much, if you worry too much, if there's gum all over the sidewalk, if the sign that reads caution, paint drying is over 5 years old, if it seems everyone is throwing out their furniture in the rain, if you want to walk alone, if you don't want to walk alone, if you want to say something about this life, if you don't want to fight, if your pants are always stained, if all your plants are dying, if you have no idea why, if you forgot to give them names, if there's another life beyond this life, if there's even tomorrow, if you hold your breath, if you're holding it now. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to read a couple more. This one's called Peter's Denial. I am a lapsed Catholic, but I carry it with me. And I love the story of Peter's denial. I think it's one of the more human elements in the Bible. And so I wrote this poem. Peter's Denial. It's been a long time since I've read the scriptures, but I remember once the Father stood in front of us to say, Christ is love. I was young then, but I remember how little I knew of love, though how it felt enough to wonder, aren't we all? I looked around and my own father held my hand and I thought, this must be love too. And that was good. I am older and sometimes the city feels huge and being huge feels so much less of love because I think love can be a tiny thing. It can fit in the smallest of places and then fill them up with love, like one window lit in a skyscraper on a night so dark it feels like it's floating there, a little bit suspended. I think that is love, to be suspended, like dust held in the light. I don't think the dust is love, and maybe not even the light, but the way both hold the hand of the other to keep the other from falling away. I think that is love. Sometimes I feel like I am falling. It is often when the world feels huge, like it often does, and my feelings feel too big for it, which they often never do, because I try to make my feelings feel small enough to pretend I don't need anyone to hold them. I put them in my pocket and walk up 5th from Central Park to the park on 120th. But when I sit, the park feels too small for me. And I remember sitting in another year, watching the kids play baseball, not having to cheer for any one or the other, just watching and being content with watching. But when I feel like I am falling, the park is not something I deserve, nor the bench, nor the block party on the corner where 3 musicians play jazz with a bassist who laughs at every quarter note. I feel too much for everything and want for everything to be alone. I would deny my father to be alone sometimes. I would deny the trees. I would deny the sky. I would deny the way, feigning sleep, you'd inch your body back to me. I never thought of how, when they kept asking Peter, do you know him? Do you know him? They were also asking, do you know love? Do you know love? When he says no, and then again, and then again, tell me you wouldn't hold him. Thank you. I'm gonna read 2 more. Is that okay? 2 more, is that cool? Cool, thanks. This is an older one. The next 2 are. This one's called If Memory is the Only Truth We Know. I have no interesting thing to say about it. It's just, this is it. If memory is the only truth we know. For years, I watched my father fill his loneliness with time. Yes, it's another father poem, sorry. For years, I watched my father fill his loneliness with time. He slept little in a bed too big for him and woke early, driving me to school with eyes stitched against his waking. I'd get home before he did, sit in front of the television, rewind the same movies on the VCR. What they don't tell you about love is that it resembles a wound, which is why so many lovers, even in the darkness of a room alone, are afraid to slip off their shirts, scared of the thin thread count of the bedsheet running against the sores just outside their hearts. My father taught me that, the way loneliness looks good on no one, and how it's love that splits the seams of an old sleep shirt until you can't sleep without the reminder of what sleep could be. When she left, I left everything in its place. The morning's coffee mug spent gathering rings, the water slowly evaporating from the bedside table's glass. I thought I could fill what absence left unfilled. But absence, even it, is made of something. The way a child is made of trauma, the way sometimes love, even at its best, feels like living in a house with no windows. I walked for a long time afterwards. I paused at every stoplight. I bought cigarettes and smoked them until I had to buy more. If memory is the only truth we know, then the present is just a shell waiting to be filled. If we acknowledged love as absence, we might spend a night running the soft edges of our fingers along the thin red of our wounds instead of trying to sew together what we can never cure. Some nights my father snuck into bed with me to trim my nails. He managed to do it noiseless, in the solitude of bodies and the dreams bodies have when bodies no longer live in this world. I think I know now why he did it this way and not in any other. Without tenderness, nothing changes. Over 10 years ago, I began a job at a cemetery. When I first met my coworker, he asked, "Do you have a girlfriend?" And when I said yes, he asked, "Do you slap her with it?" I was young and afraid. I didn't know what to say. I sweated through the thin linen of my pants and went each afternoon to lay between the graves until the white of each headstone and the light from the sun became one simmering thing so bright and beautiful I did not know if I was alive. For so long I have not been alone, and now I am, and I am already tired of myself. When I called my father to tell him it had ended, he lowered his voice to the kind of softness he must have reserved for the nights he took care of me the way they say angels do. When I hung up, I cried the long cry of being someone's son. For so long, I wanted a child, if only to mimic my father's kindness with my father watching, to look over at him, the child of his child in my arms, and say, "You did all right," so he might die happy and no longer alone. For so long, this seemed close. Now I sleep on a bedsheet made of fingernails with my own hand in my mouth. Thanks. That was a sad one. That just like tanked off at the end there. It's really plummeted. Sorry, I have to make myself laugh because when I normally do readings with people, it's my anxiety. I'm gonna do one more and then I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this without being anxious. I'm so excited to hear Dylan and Ricky. This last one's called The Day After, and it's another repetitive motion one. On the train this morning, I remove my heart and sit it next to me. On the train this morning, I put a hat on my heart in case he's cold. On the train this morning, people almost take my heart's seat until he beats his little beats and his new hat rustles like a bag caught in the wind. And the people look once at him and go somewhere else where they look at him once more. On the train this morning, I give my heart a book, but he doesn't know how to hold it. It stains, and I can tell my heart is sad, but has no words to apologize. On the train this morning, someone falls asleep. On the train this morning, someone's coffee pours itself all over their hands and they are too embarrassed to scream. On the train this morning, I am dying to look into everyone's eyes. I want to know if they are thinking of one single note being played on a piano. I want to know if they remember the sound of their mother's hands in their hair. I want to know if they kept a shirt unwashed because it was the shirt they were wearing under the bridge by the Potomac when, after the movie ended, she touched him lightly on the chest and they were both 14. On the train this morning, my heart's hat has fallen off. On the train this morning, my heart is scared of the dark. On the train this morning, my heart is the size of a fist. On the train this morning, someone picks up my heart and gives it back to me. On the train this morning, I don't know what to do. I am holding my heart in my hands and there is a hole in me where my heart should be. If you look around, you'll notice most people are terrified. They take up 2 seats. They don't want to be touched. On the train this morning, everyone has once had a bad dream. Did you forget that? On the train this morning, everyone has wanted to be forgiven. Everyone has once woken up, heart in throat, has walked heart in hand, has said, deliver me, deliver me, deliver me. Most people confuse worship for being worshiped, confuse being around people for solitude, confuse certainty for knowing anything at all. There's a tree growing through a chalked crack on a sidewalk. For days, I have gone to sleep holding a pillow into infinity and imagining a life beyond the life beyond this one. Tell me nothing's beautiful and I will die. Oh, life, I miss you so much. You were right here once. Now there's everything else. Thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to mute myself now.
Oh, that was gorgeous, Devin. Thanks so much for kicking us off. I think that was such a beautiful start. There was a line I wrote down as like my absolute favorite, which was without tenderness, nothing changes. I just thought that's such a gorgeous way to open, and also like speaks to Ricky's book, because I think, you know, there is such tenderness and kindness in Ricky's writing as well. So next up is our second reader this evening. So Dylan Krieger, and Dylan earned her BA in English and philosophy from the University of Notre Dame and her MFA in creative writing from LSU. And her first book was called Giving Godhead, and that was with Delete Press in 2017. And it was dubbed the best collection of poetry to appear in English in 2017, which is pretty big by my standards, by the New York Times Book Review. And she's also the author of an upcoming book that you should look out for. It's called Soft Focus Slaughterhouse, and it will be with 1111 Press in spring next year. I'm sure Dylan will tell us when it's out, but yes, Dylan, when you're ready, very much looking forward to your writing.
Hello all. Can everyone hear me? I'm hoping so. I just want to say thank you again for Ricky for inviting me. I'm really excited for this book, and I actually had the opportunity to write a blurb for it, which was a great experience, and to read it ahead of time. And part of the reason that I was so excited about writing that blurb was because I knew I was also putting out a book touching on my experience with chronic pain, which, you know, there are some similar themes. So I was excited to share some of this work. I actually got a few of the poems from Soft Focus Slaughterhouse published in 9 Mile magazine like 2 years ago. So I'm just going to read a few from there. And this will be out in April, I believe, from 1111 Press. Prognosis endless. Viruses and diamonds, a tale of never getting better, making a high-pressure home among coals in your spinal cord, growing old, surrounded by all your fine feathers, yet refusing to molt, stripping to your skivvies, revolting, skin sack to skin sack. Take your rape out in the rain and let it disintegrate. There's a saying for how to stay sane in this apocalypse, but I've forgotten it. I'm basically a potted plant at this point, and the singing really does work wonders. Outside a pharmacy in Floribama, I had you permanently pegged, an unremittent coastal quake, but unlike the fibromyalgia, allodynia, the song suspended, edge of my seat, watching the hoarfrost for where the perennials end and my seasonal demons begin. turning tail. Death Drive survives, and this is the titular poem. The daymare disrobes as follows. Cozy up to a headstone. This could take all year in the churchyard where no two bones are brothers. Something about coming clean always sounded dirty to me. The paradox of fucking off and on in one slow motion. The domes of great prophets go crunch in a box just like the rest of us. Sell my pen name to the end times, and I don't mean the magazine. The blackout is beautiful, I assure you. Everyone is doing it. You don't even have to know your blood type or resting heart rate to vacate the scene straight with your larynx hanging out and play the ancient no more pain game for a soft-focused slaughterhouse. I'm just gonna read two more from here. This is called Cruelty Builds Character. It's kind of one of my favorites to read from this project. Cruelty builds character. This might be the saddest maxim I could manage. What's the exact right amount of deer in the headlights, of interlocutor pressure on the knot, but not the muscle? Mother never taught me what the doctors wanted to disclose, the family history of my hip bones, the late onset schizophrenic hormones. The Scotch drinking comes with Irish silence included. I'm not sure if I've ever met anyone I would call well-adjusted, but if such a thing exists, it comes with fewer addictions and flying fists. The hardship is what holds us hostage in or out of the hospital, hopscotching in circles forever, behind the times perhaps, but ahead of the apocalypse. Too cagey to get close to anyone but a chainsaw and a crystal ball. All I'm saying is I know it's problematic, but I find damage attractive. So yes, it sucks to suffer, but would the soft fur of suburbia be preferable? I'm not actually as sure as you would figure. Even after the hairpin whiplash of college parties and their guarded powders, miracle of miracles, my mouth can still open all the way like a mint condition human. The nurses tell me I was lucky, and I place your fingers just below my cheekbones and let you catch the swing unhinge in one direction, and the sex is better after that, no question. I've shown off my weak spot, rolled over in the sandbox. I am brimming with the juices of surrender. Hear, feel, touch. I'm gonna read one more from this one. Aged well, I think, because my parents watch more Fox News than ever. This is called Passive Fascism. While mom and dad slow clap Fox News, the slinky from last Christmas finally makes it to the basement, and my sister and I strike matches in what we once called the coal room, but nothing combusts like it's supposed to. The word divorce twinkles but fizzles out on our lips, and we begin naming all the elephants piling up behind the fridge. I'm against violence, but the urge to eye for an eye grown-ups who abuse power is a bitch. 86, the taste of concussion. I'm glad I no longer remember what we were told we'd wronged or broken. Something about crying over a non-physical malady. Well, here it is, mommy. Dislocation between the ophthalmic and mandible. Bet it matches the curve of your palm under a microscope. Step right up to the bone show. Be my guest. It isn't pretty how I live. Attracts ants under the spotlight to be extinguished with their twitchy little limbs. I'm going to read one more from this project, and then I'm going to read a super new one. And I think I'll close with that. This is called Drink Yourself into the Mood, and it's kind of my ode to Louisiana. Unfortunately, I doubt we'll have Mardi Gras next year, but it's normally quite a sight. Some days Louisiana is my soulmate, just by selling me the right cognac and smiling at my shaky face melt. No judgment from the river or curbside buskers in the quarter. Every morning, a hungover heron fishes toxic prey from the lake, like it's mocking me for drowning my neuralgia in a watered down to-go cup my libido needs to function. No offense to anyone's seduction game, my body is only able to accommodate one headstrong throb at a time, the suicidal or the sexy kind, pleasure survival or the death drive. But somehow when you choke me tight enough, my fright combines them, full-on phobia fetishists, and we laugh late into the night at the flimsiness of intracellular life, admire our respective viruses for shouldering the next extinction-triggered takeover. Maybe they never saw us coming, but we did. Over and over, the arm of the sofa, a poorly upholstered token of affection for happy hour drink specials, and the bareback danger of your roommate getting home any minute. I'll miss that black bayou inside you, but by dawn, the awful birds returning will remind my jaw to jumpstart its hurting, and everything will trickle back to normal between the gulf and my outpouring of murky mass-produced daiquiris, between the secrecy of my disease and everyone I wish would touch me at the shoreline, deep in the duckweed where I can't scream. All right, I'm gonna do that. I love that on Zoom. Can I just say that I love that on Zoom readings, you cannot tell when someone's reading from their phone. So I'm just outing myself right now by saying I'm about to read from my phone. I love that you can't tell them, because I've gotten flack for that. Okay, so I'm just gonna read one more. This is an extremely new poem from a work in progress, in which every poem is called No One is Daddy. So No One is Daddy. Crawling back and crowing loud, the amniotic fluids never left us. Even the president, the Surgeon General, the World Health Organization, isn't daddy. We buy into the anarchic traffic hack of circling the roundabout without exit, insisting everyone else yield to our chaos eternally without question, tags cut from our clothes to make us untraceable, our faces neatly algorithmed under unironic gas masks. Our fear is not this apocalypse, but another, lurking, unimagined yet, unwritten by religion, undiagnosed by medicines, east and west. If we ever test negative, we'll lick each other like kittens. But for the moment, send me your best sex via satellite. Help me remember immovable boulders come from things molten. Hot, sticky magma, creation could kill us. We don't doubt that it will. But first, we'll spin here against the largest swath of concrete in this city, with our teeth bared against the fallout, like it could come down any second now. And when it does, we will swallow every drop into oblivion where we belong. Thank you guys. I love reading for you guys, and please wait and watch Ricky. I can't wait to hear him. Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks so much, Dylan. I wrote this line down and I wrote, I'm not sure I've met anyone well-adjusted. And I just thought, it made me think, have I met anyone well-adjusted? I think, they've got everything together. Probably not. So I think that is a good thing for life. I love how sardonic, pretty much all of it was. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. So now we have our wonderful headliner, Ricky Ray, this evening, and he's going to read a medley of poems from The Sound of the Earth singing to herself and some other collections and maybe new work. I'm not sure. I know Ricky's been working on some new things recently as well. So looking forward to what you got, Ricky.
Thank you, Isabel. I really appreciate all your support in publishing the book. You were a dream to work with, and thank you for holding a launch. This is actually the first launch I've ever had because my first book didn't have one. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here. And thank you, Dylan and Devin, for the blurbs, which kicked my ass. And, I felt like I received way more than I asked for. And thank you guys for that. And thank you for reading. I do want to say a little bit about them, too. As you probably heard, Devin, I feel like when you listen to his poems, you come away caring more or capable of caring more than you did before you went into that poem. And that's something I want more than anything when I go to poetry. So finding that is like finding gold. And Dylan is a force of nature. I think between 2017 and 2021, she's dropped a book a year at least. And to write a book, to get it accepted and published a year at a time is unthinkable for me. I don't know how you could be that productive. And there's so many styles and so much subject matter terrain that she's able to cover. It's amazing. All right, so I'm gonna read a bunch of poems today. Hopefully not bore you with my voice at the end. Some poems about dogs, some poems about childhood, some poems about disability, and then some poems about the earth. So I'm going to start with a dog poem. Some of you may be familiar with my poems about Addie, who's my service dog, and I write about her all the time. But before Addie, there was a dog named Rascal. And I had a strange childhood. I grew up with a father who was a crackhead, and he was my sole guardian at the time. And he wasn't around much. So my dog Rascal became my default guardian in many ways, and it's from him that I learned how to be in the world. So I found it really hard to write about him for a long time, and then a couple of years ago I was finally able to write a poem about his death. So I'm going to open with that, and sorry if it's sad, but I'm really good at writing sad poems. The end of my brother. He couldn't walk, eat, and my father didn't tell me until after he put my brother to sleep. A kindness I never wanted, still don't. Take it back. There was a hole the size of a paw print in my chest, so I went outside to give my eyes something to do. I remember it was hard to cry, as though the news had blown out all moisture and made of my body Oklahoma. There was something about the sky, the way it bled, dimming over the horizon where my brother went to bark and never came back. Pass me a beer, I said to someone who wasn't there. I just want to hold it till all the cold is gone. And I wasn't talking about the can. Too warm, we call it, when the inner and outer match. Imagine Florida and 2 inches of fur. Imagine the dog who saved my father from alcohol and despair. He was my brother, my guardian, my teacher, my guide. And he raised me on a savage hunger for every morsel of this world. We drooled, fuck yes, at the dog biscuits, the only food left in the house. So dry, so dry. Maybe that's what my grief recalled. I used to throw my head back and bark when I was young. Rascal and I had long, late talks. When I was 14, we lived alone together for 9 months. The animal, just one of 7 kingdoms we inhaled. When he was 14, he sniffed the woman who put the needle in his neck. I wasn't there. I've yipped a bit, but haven't howled at the moon since. The low rumble of a growl, however, has never left the spit-worn nest of emptiness in my throat. Thank you. So the next poem is going to be a continuation of the childhood theme, kind of what it was like to live in that house. Sometimes vision withers on the vine. Electricity was a luxury in that clapboard house. 3 rooms and 10,000 fleas. Flowed as scarce as running water because crack was more alluring than the bills. 25-cent mac and cheese. Every night for years. A burn the size of a thumb on the dull red plastic bowl. Hand-me-downs, barefoot in ditches, my finger tracing the edges of ringworm's beautiful bruise. For baths, we ran a hose from the neighbor's faucet, and through the window, by the dim light of the lamp, I watched Mrs. Morrissey take off her bra. Once, 3 hits into the pipe, my father's friend set candle after candle in the center of his palm, lit it and stared until the flame went out, wax spilling through his fingers onto the floor. I sometimes wonder what he saw in that dance of light. And sometimes I don't have to wonder. I see it too. The shiny forehead, the hollow eyes, my mother's chin, my father's jaw, my lips moving soundlessly while the ghost of the living body makes his rounds, peering into each version of my future where nothing happens, and the only thing left to do is turn out the light. Thank you. So I write a lot of sad poems because I'm good at it, and one likes to do things one does well. But I don't, for me, it doesn't lead to depression, and I hope it doesn't lead to depression in the audience. I feel like if we can plumb our sadness in poems and get to the bottom of it, then we open the way towards appreciation and gratitude when we come out the other side. And that's really what I'm trying to get at when I do this. So I'm going to read 2 poems about disability, one about how bad it gets, and then one about how great it is, because it has its benefits too. Pain, 8 on a scale out of 10. Some days I never make it out of my head, that coal-eyed melon where all my dreams crumble and drift into the weeds of sticks. The impinged nerves crack their whips within my animal pelt, and my tongue plays dead in my mouth, afraid of how much more it would hurt to cry out. But some cries cannot be stifled. Some hurts have to get worse before they get better, if they get better, if. Some nights, the sleeve of me seizes, and I hear in my writhing the devil's laugh. He's a son of a bitch, but I don't even have enough left in me to hate him. Let him have this. Let him gnaw me past care and bone. There's nothing here but hurt, and I don't want it. I want to close the eyes of my eyes, stuff the blown world in a sack, throw it over my shoulder and slip between 2 ticks of the pulse, leaving all the arguments of the flesh to cancel one another out. Thank you. So some days are that bleak, and we're able to capture them and come out the other side. And sometimes when you come out the other side, you're able to see, what a gift we have in every breath, in every instance, every moment. So the next poem is a real short poem. It's entitled Disability, but you can't see this, but the DIS on disability is in parentheses because it's also an ability. Some days, my body is so beautiful, I can't believe I get to live here. That's it. So that's the other side. It gets that bad and it gets that good, and I'm glad I have it because I wouldn't be as grateful about life as I am if I didn't. I'm going to switch gears now and read a poem called Somewhere in Indiana. I couldn't even tell you what it's about. This is one of those poems where its meaning is its being. And I think a lot of people, probably pretty much everyone, says they're inspired by Devin Kelly, and I am too. I wrote a really long paper on her once. Maybe I'll publish it one day. And I feel her spirit hovering over this poem a lot. It's a long one, so bear with me. People see it on the page and say, I don't want to read that. But everyone has said they enjoyed it afterwards, so hopefully it's worth a trip. Somewhere in Indiana, about 20 clicks east of the Mississippi, rain fills a bucket with hope. But the bucket leaks, has been sitting so long with its rust whispering henna to dirt, the black dirt, that the farm it once belonged to has faded from memory, as have the forms of value that lead from seed to mouth, where generations of teeth crumble and fall out, where kids develop poorly, not for lack of something to eat, but for lack of nutrients in their food. And the land that used to be a farm, that used to be a Cougar's Valley, has changed hands many times. It has passed between people that never once dug their fingers into the earth's body, never once felt her cool shiver as they brought her soil into the light, never carried her with them indoors, never spent 5 minutes digging her out from under their nails. They've never known this pleasure, They call it labor and shudder at the thought, like a filthy deed, like a punishment to be avoided, oblivious to the dullness in their eyes and their speech, where the names for things recede into words like bird and tree and flower. They titter with self-pleasure at the dullness it takes bad sex and liquor to shine. But the bucket lives by another code. The bucket has stood still in the weeds for decades. It has become an elder to the malnourished children who come and kick it like a cheap headstone or a relic or a cup for extinct ogres. And when it rains, the hole in the bucket, so packed with leaves it leaks slowly like the sun, the hole asks the earth to breathe up through the water, to softly sing, and she does. And for those who have the ears to hear it, her song fills the whole valley, and at dusk the deer poke their head through the woods. They follow the sound, stepping gingerly but surely, like hearts to hope, like children to promise. And if you saw it, the movement of their lips as they lowered their heads to drink, you might think they were whispering vespers to the bucket, or to the earth as she sings to them, some low lullaby of praise and deer song, like thank you, bucket, for being here, for taking a long time to depart. We count on you to wet our lips when the clouds fail to appear. They don't fill the sky like they used to. The sky bleeds with the barks of dogs and the shouts of men who loose their dogs upon us for fun. Men who wouldn't even know what to do with our bodies if we died, let alone how to bury us so we won't haunt them. And we will. We will fill them with a dread so subtle it feels like their own failure. But enough of them. We love you, bucket. And we think of you as we lose the dogs in the brush, as we approach you from across the valley, everything coated in thin white dust. And when we settle into our dens at night, we talk of you as one might talk of a cupped hand, fading slowly, the rest of the body long departed, a rusty bucket offering water, all that's left of a god. Thank you. Let me catch my breath for a second. All right, so I'd like to switch back over to the dog poems for a minute, and this time they're gonna feature Addie, my service dog right there. She's a chocolate lab and Irish setter mix, and she's my second lease on life. If Rascal raised me, then I think Addie saved me in many ways. So the first poem is mostly in her voice, and it's called When to Reveal, as told by an old brown dog. It could be so bad she could hardly walk. And still, in front of the vet, she's stoic like her papa. There's nothing wrong with me. Just give me a treat, please. I mean, another one. I mean, yeah, these treats and I have something to settle. Go ahead. You're billing us anyways. Tip over the whole jar. I don't need to be weighed. I don't need my temperature taken. I sure as hell don't need my blood drawn, imaging, or to go into the back room. I could pick this building out of 200 by a quick sniff at the stoop. It's not so bad. The elevator smells and there's urine everywhere. But those are the joys a long nose lives by. At home, though, I tell my papa, it hurts. I don't feel so well. Help me on the bed, please. It's midnight, but I can't hold it. This aging thing's a hell of a way to spend a dog's accumulated wisdom. Or maybe it's some trickster's prep course that all creatures flunk on the way to meeting their mama's maker. Everything won't be all right. Let's not lie. It never was. But another treat and more where that came from. A roll in the grass and a nap in the sun. And if I don't get up to eat the giant cookie of the moon, at least I'll be the breeze I love to drink. And my breath will drift to the edge of the world, where I'll keep on sniffing the stars, digging black holes, lifting my leg, and pissing on the god's old feet. Thank you. So that one's actually an older one from my first book, and now I'm going to read a newer one from my forthcoming book with Broken Sleep Books. called Quiet Grit Glory, and that's coming out sometime in the future. I'm not sure right now. The publishers had some health setbacks, and if you want to do something nice for someone today, go out and order a Broken Sleep book. He's the best guy there is in poetry, the most supportive, the best community builder I've met, and he could really use the support. All right, this poem's called Redeeming the Invitation. So I lived in New York City for about 20 years before recently moving to Connecticut. It's a great place to live. I love New York. If you're a social being, it's even better. I'm not really that much. And looking at a brick wall as the view out your window for a couple decades is probably enough. So there was that. And then Addie said she wanted to get out of the city, so I bought her a house in Connecticut. And we live in the woods now, and this is a poem from our first year here. Redeeming the Invitations. So little snow, it felt like bouts of dandruff salting the ground this winter. The lake froze, but even Addie's 68 pounds broke through. She sensed it happening, leaped from the cracking ice and landed on the bank, her tail carving the air. Seeing this, someone pulled the string on the light bulb in my chest. No wonder the ticks love her. No wonder I follow her lead and rub my face in the snow. Would be spontaneous, but I'm selecting the medium. I don't have the courage to rub my face in the dirt. Addie wakes me in the middle of the night and I get up, groggy but glad to take her out. I'll complain in the morning, but I'm storing these moments as presents for when she's gone. I'll take them out, sniff them over, and cry. Who else would greet the 3 a.m. wind like an old friend come to visit, throw herself into its arms? Sleep is for the dead, she says. There's more to this day than poems and pie. She's approaching 80 in dog years, but lives as if she's 35. I think it's partially for my benefit. She sees me in her rear view, unsteady at the wheel, and knows she still has a lot to teach me about aging, about ignoring it, about how to throw my body, even when it fails me, even when it hurts like hell, headlong into joy. Thank you. Addie is amazing. I could read poems about her all day, but I'm going to switch gears again and read a poem called My Favorite Sweater. So this is one of them. You know, I could probably wear a sweater and a pair of jeans every day for the rest of my life, and that would be my uniform, and I would feel no need to wear anything else. But this poem is also about notions of ownership, and I think we've got a lot of them twisted. You know, we feel like we own things, we own our sweaters, our pieces of land, and things belong to us. But I think it's really the other way around, that we belong to the land, and that we belong to the other creatures, and that what we have belongs to them as much as it belongs to us, and we should share our things with them. So this is about that. My favorite sweater. The moths have come and gone again another season, left portals in my coats and sweaters. I hope they had a good meal, that the relics of sweat didn't cause them too much indigestion. They even supped on my favorite, a third-hand green the color of pine, thick as a blanket. The goat's right up against me as the cold tries to stick its hand into my chest. I hope they ate well enough to bear another generation without the hunger and suffering too many have known. Another hand would hunt them down and smack the light from their lamps. But today, as the Christmas sun makes its 5-minute visit through my north window, where the cut flowers gave up their color in a month I can't recall, today, I wish the moths no ill. I finger the holes they made in their service to hunger, and I say to myself, it's all down to pattern, a shifting pattern, a thread of wool raveling into a thread of moth. The maw's wings, the stitchwork of the hand that knits us all. The hand itself, a stitch along a seam my mind unravels, attempting to recall. So I ponder the sweater, its genesis, its journey, the unseen influence of the bodies that bore it unto the spinner's loom and the bodies that bought it and wore it before me. And I thank the goat, and I thank the grass, and I thank the knitter whose brow furrowed over the intelligent design, roomy in the shoulders where my joints tend to complain. And I thank the maws for their generosity, leaving plenty of the forest green cashmere to keep me warm. I thank until I run out of things to thank, and the candle burns low, and the whiskey disappears, and the night calls me down. I take off the sweater and leave it, hanging, uncovered in the closet, quietly inviting the maws to come, to settle, to unhinge their mouths, and let the earth knit their soft bodies again. Thank you. All right, getting close to done. I'm gonna read 2 poems about the earth and then another really, really short one to end it off. So the title of the book is called The Sound of the Earth Singing to Herself. And one thing I'm getting at there is this sense in which we are the earth. And so, you know, we have our personal identities. We're human beings with persons and histories and memories and feelings and all of that. But I think that's only one layer of our identity. I think we're also humans in the general and the abstract. We're a species called humankind. And we're creatures, we're living creatures. And so we belong to all living creatures. We're the process of life, which life is a property of an ecosystem more than it is a property of an organism. Life as a process existed before us, and then we came into life rather than something that just happens within inside us and that goes away. And on top of all of that, we are the earth. We were the earth before we were humans. We're going to be the earth after we're humans. And I think that type of identity is the identity that we need to wake up to if we're going to have any hope of living an ecologically sound life on this planet. We're as responsible to the earth and her health as we are to our own bodies. It's the same body. And so that's what I'm getting at in the title of the book, and that's what I'm getting at in my poems about the earth. This first one is also about drugs, which is an element of my work that I'm going to explore a lot in my next full-length collection. It'll be about disability dogs and drugs for the most part. All right. The little line of humankind. Any idiot can overdose or throw his life away or abstain, i.e. throw his life away. It takes talent to get high for years on end and still hold your shit together. A little bump, a little bag that could be laid out in a single line is made to last all week. Practice makes pleasure. There is no such thing as never. You think you don't do drugs, but sensation demands it. Chemical intake, biological response. If one gets high, we all do. If one bottoms out, if one recovers, if one wakes up with his stomach pumped, he probably won't remember how it happened. None of us remembers how we happened, but we're getting high. And what's more, we're stimuli in consciousness, a little line on the mirror of life where if you hold still and look closely, you can see the thin film of condensation forming as the earth leans in to finish us off. Thank you. Now I'm going to read the last poem in the book, and this poem is really getting into what it feels like for me to wake up to myself as the earth. A sense that we're living our lives, we're also living the earth's life, and the earth is also living us. A walk in the woods. Addie has a little rush in her step as we enter the woods. She isn't alone. Fall feels like someone has stuck his hand in and snipped out my soul. I mean, the hand has come out wearing the most exquisite glove the weather has to offer and is waving everywhere at me in God colors and golds. But there's something missing, the chill within, the soul's absence calling it back. I'm not sure it should listen, at least not yet. I'm trying to unlearn the rhythms of the city. Maybe I can't. Maybe I'll always be a city person, but already the woods feel like home. Humans were never a species I was given to understand. My kind have rough barks, trunks, and a desire to hold steady, which may be a function of how poorly my legs work. Then again, does any species understand itself? That's a question for the ether, not the ear. In the forest, the walls of my mind come down and the thoughts stumble out of their tortured apartments to think. The world is spacious after all. My arboreal friends are busy perfecting the 7,000 kinds of quiet. It's conversational, not shushes, but whispers that spill from branch to branch the secrets of the earth. These secrets, to know them is to live them. They spend the way a conductor moves his hand, and the trees are full of conductors. Every time I look up into a canopy, I see a mind at work. Whose, though? Did the trees conjure a bird song? Or did the birds sing the trees up and around them? Or did they meet in the middle? Tree song trilling an outlet in feathered throats. At some point, the birds lift up in unison and flock out of sight. The leaves flap and fall like waves upon the water. The estuary of the mind gives way to the amniotic ocean it inhabits, and the sensation is no longer one of walking, it's one of being walked. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna end with one last little poem. It's called Ache. It's 2 lines. I'm trying to write a whole book of these, and I think this is a good start. Ache. I want a poem so close to hurt, it bruises my lips on the way out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky. It was gorgeous. It's lovely to hear the poems spoken and brought to life, as well as reading them on the page. And great to hear the gems that aren't in the book that, you know, like some of them I've read, some of them I've not. And, you know, it's just lovely to hear them read out loud. Got quite emotional about some of the dog poems and getting old. And, you know, I was like, oh, don't cry on Zoom. But it was fine, I recovered. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And you're getting so many lovely comments. You'll have to go back and read the Zoom chat to see what everyone thought, because I think everyone's found them really moving and profound, and lots of lovely lines have been singled out for you. So what I should say is, of course, where you can buy the lovely book if you would like a copy. You can, of course, get it from Fly on the Wall Press. So it's www.flyonthewallpoetry.co.uk. Or you can get it from any online retailer. So, of course, we've got an international audience tonight. Anywhere that you usually get your book online, you can do so. And you should be able to order them into store as well if you just ask your local bookshop. And also we're doing, because Ricky's got his next book out, Quiet, Grit and Glory with Broken Sleep, myself and Aaron have set up that if you just email us and you have got either this copy or you've pre-ordered Quiet, Grit and Glory, you can get 10% off the other book, because they're very much sister books. And Ricky has told us that the themes are very much aligned, and they kind of speak to each other as well. So if you do like them and you'd like one, then you can get 10% off the other. Thank you so much for all our performers. I think it's been a gorgeous evening of different styles, different themes, but I think they all spoke to Ricky's work in a really wonderful way. And thank you so much for being our blurb writers as well, because I know how happy Ricky was when they come in, and that's a big part of the book, seeing the first people that read it and what they thought. So thank you as well for our audience for joining us this evening. And I hope whatever you do for the rest of your weekend, you'll really enjoy it and you'll get to go out and go on a walk and see the minds at work that Ricky was talking about in the trees and in nature. So I will say good night, good afternoon, and that's me. Would you like to say anything to finish, Ricky, your first book launch?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having it. Thank you, Dylan and Devin, for coming out. I wish I could listen to you guys read all day instead of reading myself. So let's do that sometime. And thank you to the audience for coming. Please buy the book and please go out and buy all of Dylan's and Devin's book while you're doing it. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone.